Every attack point you have essentially grants you 4 dice rolls that decide on whether or not you will hit the enemy. Having higher armor when the enemy has piercing does not only grant the reduced taken damage by the enemy, but it also increases the amount of orc dice rolls for every attack from 4 to 6, essentially meaning that having higher armor when the enemy is piercing, regardless of how much more armor you have, increases the orc damage you deal by 50%. The production formula makes the same amount of cap almost always more useful than the same amount of output. And while cap does take time to scale, it is important to note that cap also increases the rate at which efficiency grows. But generally in almost all scenarios, you want to prioritize cap and machine tools over factory output and concentrated or dispersed. Enemy cast can deal quite a lot of damage to you. What many don't know though is that you can reduce the enemy cast damage by 75%, and you achieve this by just having 10.8 average air attack in your division. That is almost nothing. Many people go way beyond that, and this is basically achieved with one support AA1. Hence making AA1 and AA in general one of the strongest support communities in the game. If you get planning on divisions before sending them away as volunteers, they don't lose any planning, but will retain all of their planning once they arrive, allowing you to immediately fight with more stats than the enemy. Many allied miners lack war support. A good way to deal with that is by designing and building a war support cruiser, which is just the cheapest possible heavy cruiser that can be built, to then make it the pride of your fleet for free, to gain 5% more war support. Usually you are not able to apply MIOs on licensed tanks or planes, but if you click the auto design button, the game automatically applies an MIO for you. It will be grayed out and it appears to not be working, but if you check the actual stats of the equipment, you can see that it does actually work. The ground support modifier in your air doctrine applies on a battle basis and has nothing to do with the controller of the CAS. So even if you don't control or own CAS, your allies will still be able to provide you with more stats by you going for this doctrine. Battalion modifiers, like the breakthrough of a flame tank or the recovery rate of military police, work even if you turn off the equipment for your division. So let's say, if you can't produce enough flame tanks, but you still want that extra breakthrough, you can just put them in anyhow. For some reason, this also works with terrain modifiers, specifically for flame tanks, although Paradox fixed that for certain other equipments like engineers. If you plan a lot of naval invasions, or anything else for that, and you right-click on your army, the divisions will spread equally onto all given orders. This is really useful for D-Day and naval invasions in general, but it's just a generally very unknown but very useful micro trick. Shore and railway gun bombardment are essentially the same modifier and do not stack. This can be useful to keep in mind in case you want to spare your navy or railway guns in areas like North Africa or D-Day. CAS air wings are able to trade against enemy fighters while being on the CAS mission. This is pretty strong, since the CAS mission of the middle air doctrine gives more air efficiency than any other mission, hence making a CAS fighter on the middle air doctrine essentially the best trading fighter in the game. It is important to consider though, that this fighter only flies during combat, and that you need a CAS module that doesn't take away agility, like rocket rails, so that the trades don't turn bad. Putting your navy on naval invasion support makes it automatically give shore bombardment for battles, which is useful in case you don't want to micro it manually. This also enables shore bombardment without taking away any supply from your local units. Motorized AT gives more piercing than normal AT. This can be really important for Marines and other offensive infantry, since as a rule of thumb, your offensive infantry divisions, be it special forces or just normal infantry, should always be able to pierce the enemy tanks. SPAA is the tank battalion with the least amount of tanks per battalion, only requiring 36 tanks for light, medium and heavy SPAA, as opposed to normal light, medium and heavy tanks, usually taking up 60, 50 and 40 equipment per battalion each. This makes light SPAA overall by far the cheapest tank battalion in the game, which is useful for armor memes and potentially for some other funny strategies. When moving troops through certain terrain types like deserts, mountains or marshes, they take heavy attrition losses. This can be completely circumvented though by railwaying your divisions through the terrain. You can manually motorize supply hubs on the supply map mode. This is really important because if you motorize the supply hubs, it will increase supply for your entire team, even if you are not fighting in the specific zone. Volunteer naval invasions can't get raided, allowing nations like Spain to naval invade the UK without any opposition from the Royal Navy. No Green Navy or convoy escorts needed. Shore bombardment is entirely based on your Navy's attack stat. Hence, training your Navy and selecting an admiral with higher attack surprisingly boosts your shore bombardment to max even faster. Amphibious attack caps at 50%, therefore making any attack beyond that useless. This is the reason for mountaineer marines being better than regular marines, since mountaineers have higher stats per battalion, rendering any additional marines useless. You cannot convert allied planes of the same role. You can, however, convert allied planes of a different role. This enables strategies like Italy building a CAS fighter and Germany then converting it into their fighter using the broken German range MIO. Naval speed offers what is essentially extra HP to your ships, making the Naval Maneuver Advisor typically the best naval advisor in the game. As a quick note as well, Concealment Expert is the best admiral trait in the game. To rush a research correctly, you first want to research without an MIO, and then apply an MIO to the tech juggle with an MIO. The tech juggle is when you keep a resource slot open for 30 days while researching something else, and then you change the tech you were initially researching onto another resource slot and use the 30 saved up days on the technology you want to rush. Medium and light tank MIOs can be exploited to work on heavy tanks as well, by applying the right policy. Germany, for example, can abuse this by producing medium tanks and heavy tanks, and once the medium tank MIO has grinded to level 6, they can abuse the extremely overpowered Daimler-Benz production with extremely overpowered Henschel stats on the heavy tanks. Before engaging an enemy navy, your navy should always be on always engage and never repair, in order to avoid the penalties induced by retreating early. Before engaging, also make sure to always have full fuel and full supply on your navy. Rubber rafts are the most expensive building in the game. If you plan on building them with your nation, you should always make sure to stack as many bonuses as possible on the construction and reserve the best building slots with dams and high infrastructure for them. They cost almost twice as much I see as one military factory, therefore the payoff of them having a greater building slot and the military factory having a worse building slot will be twice as much. In vanilla HOI4 MP, what you should always do is you should always build 2 whiffs and put them into your state's capital or into any other state, it doesn't really matter. Then you assign a general to them, each individually, for one division. You make 4 or 5 of these, and then whenever you need to last stand or force attack a division, you put them into that new general and last stand and force attack that one. This will save a lot of command power and enable you to force attack and last stand a lot more often.